spent countless Sunday mornings drinking coffee and planning our future, was now the altar of their betrayal. "I can't keep doing this," my sister whispered, her voice thick with guilt and pleasure. "She's going to find out." Blake's laugh was low and cool. "She's too trusting. Too..." Those words hit me harder than any physical blow ever could. I backed away, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they'd hear it. But they were too lost in each other to notice the woman whose life they were destroying standing right behind them. I made it to my car before the tears came. They fell like the rain outside, heavy and relentless. My phone buzzed with a text. Like, "Missing you, baby. Can't wait for you to come home tomorrow." Tomorrow? He expected me home tomorrow. I sat in that car for 2 hours watching the rain streak down the windshield like nature was crying with me. That's when the first spark of something darker than sadness began to burn in my chest. It wasn't just anger. It was something cold and calculating, something that whispered sweet promises of justice. By the time I drove to the hotel across town, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Blake thought I was stupid. He thought I was weak. He thought I'd never find out. He was wrong on every count. My name is Victoria, and for 8 years, I'd been the perfect wife. I cooked his favorite meals, ironed his shirts, smiled at his work parties, and bit my tongue when he criticized everything from my cooking to my career. I'd molded myself into
当七
whatever
月
shape
的
he
风
wanted,
吹
thinking
过，
that was what love looked
阳
like.
光洒满了
I met
窗
Blake
格，
at a coffee shop downtown
我
when I
们
was
十
25.
指紧
He
扣
was
着，
sitting alone reading a newspaper,
听同
looking
一首
sophisticated
歌，
in his tailored.
那一场大雨滂
When he asked if he could
沱，
buy me a
时
coffee,
间
I
在
felt like
这
the
里
luckiest
定
woman.
格。 17岁的我，总爱傻笑着抬头看你说，你说美好和那些经过，你说时间抵不过你我，时间是一个圆，怎么会走散了？那时候最好的我们，有简单、勇敢的天真，到现在夜空闪烁，只留下我一个人看烟火。那时候最好的我
Furniture, even my clothes for
当
important
七月
events.
的风吹过，
It was
阳光洒
romantic.
满了。
That he cared so much he wanted to take care of everything. Looking back, I can see how carefully he isolated me, how he slowly stripped away every piece of who I was until I was nothing but Blake's wife. My friends drifted away when I kept canceling plans. My family relationships grew strained when I always chose his side over theirs. My sister Emma was the only one who fought for me. She'd call me crying after family dinners, begging me to see how Blake controlled every conversation, how he made subtle digs at everyone while smiling that charming smile. But I defended him. I always defended him. "He's not perfect," I told her, "but he loves me." Now I know the truth. Blake didn't love me. He loved having me. There's a difference between being loved and being owned, and I was too naive to see it. The morning after I found them together, I woke up in that hotel room feeling like a stranger in my own skin. I'd barely slept. My mind raced with images I couldn't unsee. Blake's hands on Emma's body, her soft moans in my living room, his cruel laughter echoing in my ears. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Blake, 2 from Emma. My heart twisted with fresh pain. How long had this been going on? How many times had they betrayed me under my own roof? I called in sick to work and spent the day in that hotel room staring at the ceiling and planning. People think revenge is about anger, but that's not true. Real revenge is about precision. It's about patience. It's about making sure the punishment fits the crime perfectly. Blake had taken everything from me. My trust, my self-worth, my family. He'd made me feel small and stupid and worthless. So I was going to take everything from him, but I wasn't going to do it in a fit of rage. I was going to do it systematically, carefully, beautifully. By evening, I had my plan. The next morning, I drove home as though nothing had happened. Blake was in the kitchen, fully dressed for work, scrolling through his phone. He looked up. When I walked in, and his smile was so genuine it made my stomach turn. "You're home early," he said, coming over to kiss my cheek. "I thought your flight wasn't until this afternoon." Got moved to an earlier one. I lied smoothly, accepting his embrace even though my skin crawled. Wanted to surprise me? He murmured, pulling me close. I could still smell Emma's perfume on his shirt. Perfume my own sister had worn since high school. I missed you, he whispered into my hair. The house felt so empty without you. I pulled back and looked into his eyes. Those same eyes that had looked at me with adoration on our wedding day. I missed you too, I said, and meant it in the most twisted way possible. Over the next few days, I watched Blake like a scientist studying a lab rat. I noticed things I'd never paid attention to before. How he always put his phone face down when I was around. How he'd developed sudden work emergencies that required him to leave the house for hours, and how he started coming home smelling like he'd showered somewhere else. I began keeping a journal documenting every suspicious behavior, not because I needed proof of his affair, I'd seen enough, but because I needed to understand the scope of his betrayal. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. That town? Hardest part was pretending everything was normal. I cooked his favorite dinners, listened to his stories about work, laughed at his jokes. I played the role of the loving wife while my heart turned to stone in my chest. You've been quiet lately, Blake said one evening as we sat on the couch watching TV, the same couch where I'd found him with Emma. Everything okay? I asked. Just tired, he shrugged. Work's been stressful. That night, after he fell asleep, I did something I'd never done before. I went through his phone. He'd been careless, probably because he thought I was too trusting to ever suspect anything. The messages between him and Emma went back 5 months. 5 months of secret meetings, stolen moments, and plans made behind my back. They hadn't just confessed their love, they'd plotted my downfall. Blake called me the warden and the ball and chain. Emma referred to me as the obstacle. They joked about how naive I was, how easy it was to fool me. But the message that broke something inside me was from last week. Blake. I'm thinking about asking for a divorce. I can't keep pretending to love her. Emma. What about the house, the money? Blake. I've been moving assets. For months. She won't get much. Too stupid to pay attention to finances anyway. He'd been planning to leave me. He'd been stealing from me. He'd been doing it all while I cooked his meals and washed his clothes and shared his bed. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked for the first time in years. I saw a woman who'd lost herself completely, who'd become so small, so quiet, so accommodating, that she'd disappeared entirely. But I also saw something else. A woman who was done being anyone's fool. I'd always been good with money. Before Blake convinced me to quit my job, I was a successful graphic designer with a head for numbers. I'd helped manage our finances in the early years of our marriage, but he'd gradually taken over, saying it was one less thing for me to worry about. Now I realized he'd been planning this betrayal far longer than I'd ever imagined. Spent the next week playing detective in my own life. I made copies of every financial document I could find. Bank statements, investment accounts, insurance policies, even our house deed. Blake kept everything in a filing cabinet in his home, office, and he'd never thought to lock it. Why would he, when he trusted me to? Never question him. What I found made my blood run cold. He'd systematically moved our assets into accounts under his name only. The house we bought together was now solely his. Our joint savings account had been drained, transferred to a private account I'd never heard of. On paper, I owned almost nothing. If he divorced me tomorrow, I'd be left with virtually nothing while he kept everything we'd built together. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. Before we met, I inherited a small sum from my grandmother. Not much, but I'd invested it wisely. Over the years, it had grown into something substantial. More importantly, I'd kept my professional licenses and certifications current. I could go back to work anytime I wanted. I'd been freelancing small projects on the side, telling Blake the money was from odd jobs. He never noticed how much I was making. I had resources, skills, and, most importantly, motivation. I researched divorce lawyers, private investigators, accountants, asset recovery specialists, financial fraud experts, even alienation of affection laws. I became an expert in legal revenge, but the law would only get me so far. A messy, expensive divorce might never recover everything he'd stolen. No, I needed him to feel the same devastating betrayal I felt. I needed him to lose everything that mattered to him. Just like he'd destroyed everything that mattered to me. That's when I remembered who else to target. Blake worked at a prestigious law firm and was up for partner this year. His boss, Richard Hawthorne, believed fiercely in family values. The firm's biggest client, Greg Darrell, was even more conservative. He'd fired another firm's partner for cheating before. Their image obsession made them vulnerable. My sister Emma taught at an elite private school with a strict morality clause in her contract. Any scandal, and she'd be out. I had my players: Blake, Emma, Hawthorne, Darrell, and the school board. All of them had reputations to lose. Now I needed evidence so damning they'd never recover. I set my trap for a Friday evening. I told Blake I was visiting my friend Monica in the next town over until Saturday afternoon. In truth, I parked at a coffee shop across the street from our house. I needed to see them in my sanctuary. At 7:30 p.m., Blake arrived alone. 20 minutes later, Emma's car pulled in. I watched for 3 hours as they sneaked inside, defiling my bed and my home with their betrayal. Their laughter and moans echoed through my walls. And still I waited, patiently, precisely, until Emma drove away at 11 and Blake retreated to the shower, humming happily. That night, I retrieved the hidden camera's memory card. The footage was even better than I'd hoped. Felony level, evidence of their affair, plus the most damning moment: Blake reading my private letter to my grandmother aloud to Emma, both of them laughing at my deepest fears and insecurities. That was the moment I knew I'd destroy them both without a single regret. Over the next 2 weeks, I prepared every detail: copies of the video, secure backups, and versions tailored for each target. I set up a new bank account for my grandmother's inheritance, packed my belongings into a rented apartment across town, and quietly reconnected with old friends. One of them, Grace, owned a marketing agency and offered me a director position on the spot after seeing my portfolio. Everything was falling into place. Then Blake announced the partner celebration: Hawthorne's mansion, the firm's elite, Darrell himself attending. "This is where I seal the partnership," he told me, eyes shining. "Greg wants to meet the woman who's been keeping me grounded." I smiled, played the supportive wife, all while the camera in my purse recorded every word. At 10 p.m., I excused myself to use the restroom but slipped into Hawthorne's study and scheduled a midnight email titled "Important Blake Hartwell," addressed to every partner and client with the affair footage, the financial fraud evidence, and a detailed timeline of their treachery. Then I returned to the party as if nothing had happened. At 11:30 p.m., I told Blake I was tired. "Take the car," he said absently. "I'll get a ride home later." I left, drove to my new apartment, and changed the locks on our house. I left Blake's belongings in boxes on the porch and taped a single note to the door. "Blake, I know about Emma, I know about the money, I know everything. You said I was too stupid to see what was coming. You were wrong. Enjoy explaining this to your colleagues Monday morning. Don't try to contact me. My lawyer will be in touch. Victoria." I drove away and let the storm hit. Monday morning, I switched on my phone. 73 missed calls, over 100 texts. From Blake, Emma, my parents, friends, even reporters. I ignored them and went to work at Grace's agency. She handed me a tablet with the headline: "Prominent attorney caught in scandal. Affair with wife's sister. Rocks legal community." The article detailed the affair, the financial fraud, the leaked footage. It quoted Darrell's disgust and mentioned Emma's suspension pending a morality investigation. I closed the tablet and breathed deeply. "Are you okay?" Grace asked. "I'm better than okay," I said and smiled. Over the next days, Blake's firm collapsed. No partnership, a bar investigation, clients fled. Darrell blackballed him. Emma was fired and blacklisted from teaching locally. My parents called, proud I'd stood up for myself, though mother wept for my pain and father grunted. That bastard got what he deserved. My friend Monica called, proud but worried it'd follow me. I was ready for it. 6 months later, I sat in my new office. Creative director, a team, a salary twice what I'd made before. I'd started dating again, someone who never tried to change me. My life was full of possibilities. Then my phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Victoria? Blake's voice was broken. What do you want? I asked. Please, wait. I need you to know how sorry I am. I lost everything. My career, my reputation, my family. I can't sleep. Every night I think of you. Every night I think of what I lost. Emma and I only lasted 3 weeks after the scandal. Betrayal wasn't romantic when we were broke and alone. I'm haunted by what I did. I know you'll never forgive me, but I had to tell you. I pressed end and deleted the call. That night, I went home to Alex, who greeted me with warmth. How was your day? He asked. Good, I said, and meant it. Really good. Blake spends the rest of his life haunted by what he threw away. Emma vanished entirely. I spend mine free from the shadow of their deceit, building something beautiful with someone who deserves my love. The quiet I left behind was louder than any words I could have spoken. The locks I changed were nothing compared to the doors I'd closed in my heart, and the man who thought I was a fool learned too late that the quiet ones are often the most dangerous when they finally decide to roar. Some betrayals echo forever, and some survivors rise above the echo to create their own beautiful noise. He was wrong. What haunts him most isn't what I took away. It's what he threw away when he thought I wasn't watching.